Bend the rules, play the game, shake the dice, stay cold. Mirror full of scars, stack the chips, pay the toll. Whispers in the alleys, concrete tells my tale. Golden dreams in my pocket, ships set full sail. Feet to the pavement, the grind don't stop. Heart on my sleeve while the beat still pop. Round every corner, another throne to take. Keep moving forward, my story's mine to make. Shadows in my city, hum a low-key tune. Neon lights blink truths in the late-night gloom. Weaving through the labyrinth, my mind on spree. Survivor in the jungle built from debris. Eyes to the skyline, scars on my path ain't paved, carved away with my hand. Footsteps echo loud where the dreamers stand. Feet to the pavement, the grind don't stop. Heart on my sleeve while the beat still pop. Round every corner, another throne to take. Keep moving forward, my story's mine to make. Spit scriptures like prophets, ink stain my scroll. Paint the future vivid, chase the untamed goal. From ashes rose the phoenix, flames in my chest. Forward motion infinite, never settle for less. Feet to the pavement, the grind don't stop. Heart on my sleeve while the beat still pop. Round every corner, another throne to take. Keep moving forward, my story's mine to make. Shadows in my city, hum a low-key tune. Neon lights blink truths in the late-night gloom. Weaving through the labyrinth, my mind on spree. Survivor in the jungle built from debris. Eyes to the skyline, scars on repeat. Lessons sound heavy, but the flavor's still sweet. Path ain't paved, carved away with my hand. Footsteps echo loud where the dreamers stand. Spit scriptures like prophets, ink stain my scroll. Paint the future vivid, chase the untamed goal. From ashes rose the phoenix, flames in my chest. Forward motion infinite, never settle for less.
We rise, we fight, we stand, we heal, we break those chains. Yeah, the pain is real, but we stronger than the scars, stronger than the fears. This is for the ones who made it. The Survivor Series, yeah. The Survivor Series is for the ones who survived the series.
For the one series, the Survivor Series.
I know the dark can feel like it's endless. Trapped in a war, no exit, defenseless. But every wound got a story to tell. Every tear that you shed, man, it's part of the spell. They said you break, but look where you stand. Took every hit, but you still made a plan. They counted you out, but you flipped the page. Turned pain into power, now you light up the stage. Yeah, we've been through the fire, through the storm, through the fight, but we never let the darkness take away our light. Every heartbeat is a battle, every step is a win. We survivors, yeah, we rise again. We rise, we fight, we stand, we heal, we break those chains. Yeah, the pain is real, but we stronger than the scars, stronger than the fears. This is for the ones who made it. The Survivor Series, yeah. The Survivor Series is for the ones. The Survivor Series, the Survivor Series is for the ones who made it. They don't see the nights when the nightmares creep, or the weight of the past when it cuts too deep. But you walk with a purpose, head held high, proof that a fighter never truly dies. We don't forget, but we learn how to live. Turn the hurt into hope. Got
You are listening to That's Life, a One Love media production.
The following episode of That's Life contains descriptions of abuse, murder, sexual assault, and human trafficking, and may be disturbing to some. Listener discretion is advised.
There are some stories that don't make the headlines as often as they should. Some injustices that don't get the outcry they deserve. And some communities that time and time again are left to fight for justice on their own. Today, we're diving deep into one of the most heartbreaking and outrageous crises in North America. Missing and murdered Indigenous women, or MMIW. Indigenous women are disappearing at an alarming rate. And the response? Silence. Or worse, indifference. Law enforcement dismisses cases. The media barely covers them. And the families? They're left searching, fighting, and demanding answers in a system that seems determined to ignore them. But today, we're not ignoring it. Today, I am pulling back the curtain, exposing the truth, and asking the hard questions. Why is this happening? Who's responsible? And more importantly, what can be done to stop it? And why hasn't it stopped yet? This isn't just a conversation. Today is a call for action. Because justice isn't justice if it's only for some. We know that when someone goes missing, it's a crisis. But for Indigenous women, the crisis is often met with indifference. The numbers are staggering and heartbreaking. According to the Bureau of Indian Affairs, Indigenous women are 2.5 times more likely to be murdered than any other group in the United States. And while there's no official count, some estimates suggest that over 5,700 Indigenous women have gone missing in the last few decades. Yet these cases are routinely underreported and underinvestigated. Reports also show that only 50% of cases involving Indigenous women are entered into the National Crime Information Center database, or the NCIC, leaving a massive gap in tracking these disappearances. How can we solve a problem when we don't even have accurate data to start with? It's not just a lack of action. It's systemic neglect. In many cases, local law enforcement doesn't take these cases seriously enough, leaving families without answers and the law without leads. According to a 2020 study by the Urban Indian Health Institute, there were 506 reported cases of murdered Indigenous women in 2016 alone. And these are just the ones we know about. And that's only the tip of the iceberg. Many cases are never recorded and remain unsolved. And it gets worse. These stories of missing and murdered Indigenous women rarely make national news. And when they do, the coverage is often short-lived. Media outlets, law enforcement, and even the public turn a blind eye, But Indigenous families are left to carry the weight of the search, often with little help from authorities. In fact, some families have said they felt outright dismissed by law enforcement. These women are treated like invisible victims in their own communities. And outside those communities, they're often forgotten. But let's take a step back here, because this isn't new. And we know this. This isn't some random failure of our justice system. No, this is a deep-rooted issue. Disappearance and murder of Indigenous women is a direct continuation of the historical erasure and oppression of Indigenous peoples in this country. And when I say erasure, I mean generations of stolen land, stolen children, and stolen lives. We can't talk about the MMIW crisis without acknowledging the deep scars left by the Trail of Tears and the decimation of entire cultures in the 19th century. Over 60,000 Indigenous people were forcibly relocated during the Trail of Tears. Thousands died from exposure, starvation, and disease. But what's even worse is that it was just one part of a centuries-long campaign to strip Indigenous people of their land, their heritage, and their rights. I want you to imagine this. Entire families wiped out. Mothers, daughters, children taken by both disease and deliberate neglect. And then just when they thought they had suffered enough, the American government stepped in and forcibly took their land. All of it ripped from them. That was supposed to be the end of it, right? That was supposed to be the low point, but the atrocities didn't stop, because even after losing their homes and their people, Indigenous women continued to be treated as disposable, an afterthought in a system that refused to even acknowledge their existence. Is it any wonder, then, that the same pattern continues today? The death of generations wasn't enough. Now it's the disappearance and murder of their women, the continued violation of their bodies and spirits, as though their lives are worth even less than the land that was stolen from them. This has never been about just missing people. This is about a culture and a community that has been systematically ignored and denied its humanity for centuries. And now, the very people who have been marginalized for generations are being forced to fight for their lives again. But this time, it's not just about survival. It's about recognition. It's about justice. And it's about demanding that Indigenous women no longer be overlooked or erased. So we've talked about the numbers, and we know the heartbreaking truth about how many women go missing or are murdered every year. But here's a bigger question. Why does this keep happening? Why is there such an alarming lack of urgency when it comes to investigating these cases? Well, let's start with the obvious. Law enforcement. The simple truth is that there's a systemic failure when it comes to responding to missing and murdered Indigenous women. Local law enforcement, especially in rural and remote areas where many Indigenous communities live, lacks the resources, the training, and the support to investigate these types of cases properly. In fact, There are numerous instances where local police fail to even file proper reports or take the initial steps to investigate a missing person report. In many cases, jurisdictional issues create even bigger barriers. You see, many indigenous communities are governed by tribal law, but if a crime occurs on tribal land, state or federal agencies often have to intervene, creating a bureaucratic mess that delays or prevents proper action. This confusion means that cases are left unresolved or mishandled, and families are left with no recourse. And here's where it gets even more disturbing. There's a history of law enforcement failing to prioritize cases involving Indigenous people, even when they do get reported. In fact, a 2019 report by the National Institute of Justice found that Indigenous women are often classified as runaways or voluntarily missing when they disappear, leading to delayed investigations and fewer resources dedicated to finding them. Law enforcement often treats these cases as less important than others, leaving families to pick up the pieces on their own. Some say this is a result of bias, that because Indigenous communities are marginalized and often in poverty, there's a deep-rooted prejudice in how these cases are treated. And this isn't just speculation. Research from Urban Indian Health Institute points to clear patterns of discriminatory practices and outright neglect in law enforcement's response to these crimes. But who's really responsible for all of this? Come on, that's an easy one. The government. They have a massive part to play in this ongoing crisis. Over the years, they've continuously failed to address the issues facing Indigenous communities, whether it's through a lack of investment in tribal law enforcement, failure to provide necessary training, or ignoring the warnings and pleas from family members. The FBI and other federal agencies, despite having a mandate to protect all citizens, often fail to treat the disappearance and murder of Indigenous women with the urgency it deserves. Even when investigations do happen, they're not always thorough. The FBI itself has come under fire for its lack of consistent follow-through on cases involving Indigenous women. The Justice Department has acknowledged that it has not dedicated enough resources to combating the MMIW crisis, often leaving cases to fall through the cracks. And even when an investigation does take place, the data collection process is often incomplete or not standardized, which only compounds the problem. It's easy to overlook these women when their stories aren't being told. The lack of media coverage, combined with systemic neglect from law enforcement, makes these cases even harder to solve. And when the system fails to prioritize their safety, it sends a dangerous message that their lives don't matter as much as others. But we can't and we won't afford to ignore this any longer. The longer we stay silent, the more women go missing. It's easy to look at statistics and feel detached. Numbers on a page don't have faces. They don't have voices. They don't have families who are still begging for answers. But behind every missing or murdered Indigenous woman is a life, a person who mattered. And because they matter, today I want to introduce you to just 3 of them. 3 women whose disappearances were met with silence instead of urgency. 3 women whose families are still fighting to be heard, because if we say their names, maybe, just maybe, the world will finally start listening. We're going to start with Emily Pike. She is from the San Carlos Apache tribe. Her age, 14. Case details. Emily Pike was a 14-year-old girl who went missing from a group home in Mesa, Arizona on January 27th, 2025. Despite her family's urgent appeals and concerns, her dismembered remains were discovered 18 days later on Valentine's Day along a dirt road. Authorities ruled her death a homicide and identified 3 suspects, but their names have not been disclosed. Number 2, Mary Ellen Johnson Davis. From the Tulalip tribe. Age, 39. Available case details. Mary Ellen Johnson Davis disappeared in 2020. Her husband reported her missing before leaving the state and changing his phone number. Despite her family's persistent efforts and suspicions of foul play, little information has surfaced regarding her whereabouts. Her sisters believe she was abducted and possibly killed. The family's struggle to find answers is documented in the film Missing from Fire Trail Road, highlighting the broader epidemic of missing Native women. Amber Tuccaro, Tuccaro. She was from the Mikisew Cree First Nation tribe. Her age, 20. Available case details. Amber Tuccaro went missing on August 18th, 2010, after accepting a ride from an unknown man near Edmonton, Alberta. Her family